All right, everybody, welcome to our special meeting for the Kessler Mountain Trails Master Plan. Will somebody on the staff please do a roll call, please? Here. 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 Okay. I just want to give everybody a little bit of information regarding the guidelines for this meeting. Basically, we're going to have a presentation of the plan, and then we'll have some information from staff, and then following that, we'll have any public input that any of you would like to contribute. Any questions that you have will be directed to myself. This is a public input session. It's not a debate. Speakers are requested to state their name and their address. If questions relate to our consultant's input, I will request that from him. Speakers are to keep their input concise and not be redundant in repeating the same comments as others. There will not be a time limit for each speaker. However, I may request for the speaker to quickly summarize your response if necessary in order to allow for others to make their comments. Speakers will have one turn to make their comments unless one of our board members requests for that speaker to return to the podium. PRAB members, board members, may address questions to the consultant or to park staff at any time during the meeting. So thank you all for understanding those guidelines. At this time, I'd like to ask Connie Evanston, our Parks Director, to speak, please.
Anyhow, I'm going to have Kitty to come up and kind of give just a quick background of the project.
Thank you, Connie. I just wanted to give a quick overview on the process that we went through that led to where we are tonight. I don't think any of us can argue with the fact that the acquisition of the property at Mount Kessler was a great thing. And so I will not go through any of that, but basically the city acquired the Mount Kessler property with grant assistance from the Walton Family Foundation and commitments through the Fayetteville Natural Heritage Commission. Actually recorded the deed in March of 2014. So we've been working on this since for about just almost, a little over 2 years now. Conditions of the grant committed the city to establish a public trailhead and to a public trailhead on the east side off Judge Cummings Road, and also to make recommendations on improvements to the existing trails. The trailhead was established in the spring of 2014. And to meet the second directive, the city elected to hire a professional to prepare a Trails Master Plan. And through an RFP, a request for proposal selection process, Progressive Trail Design of Fayetteville was selected as the contractor, as the consultant. And even before this time and during this time, there were several groups that had been instrumental before, were very active in the acquisition promoting the acquisition of the property and assisting with that. And representatives of these groups were invited to join in with the planning team as a steering committee, or what we call the stakeholder group. Representatives of the groups, actually, the groups themselves consisted of the Walton Family Foundation, the Beaver Watershed Alliance, the Fayetteville Natural Heritage Association, Fayetteville Public Schools, Illinois River Watershed Partnership, International Mountain Bicycling Association, Kessler Greenways, Northwest Arkansas Audubon Society, Arkansas Audubon, Northwest Arkansas Land Trust, Ozark Off-Road Cyclists, Ozark Regional Land Trust. Departments within the city that were active in the preparation of the plan were the Active Transportation Committee, the Development Services Office, Parks and Recreation, and the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. The consultants that were involved were Progressive Trail Design as a part of their team, Alta Planning and Design, and the Ozark Ecological Restoration Incorporated. And Amy Reeves Robinson served as the facilitator during the stakeholder meetings. The stakeholders first met on August the 3rd, 2015, and the initial public meeting to seek input on what they wanted to see, what the public wanted to see, content of the plan, occurred on August the 31st of 2015. A total of 5 stakeholder meetings were held, and an additional public meeting was held on December 14th to present the plan and seek comments on that. Now, after receiving comments from the public on that plan, revisions were made. We held another stakeholder meeting, and these revisions were made from that, and this is the plan that we're seeing tonight. And that's just kind of a brief synopsis of the process that we went through, and you may hear a little bit more about that as Woody talks about the plan itself. And for a presentation of the plan, this is Nathan Woodruff, Woody, with Progressive Trail Design. And,
all right. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. I'd like to start just by thanking the City of Fayetteville and thanking the staff at the City of Fayetteville, Connie, Allison, and Ken. Also thanking the Parks Board for this opportunity to present this plan to you guys. And then thanking the citizens for their input and the stakeholders that really drove the ship to develop this plan. It's really an honor to be a part of it, considering this is my hometown and this is where our company started. So today I just want to give you guys a brief overview of the plan to everybody. You can download the plan on the city website. This is actually a final revision. There's been a couple of changes since the last stakeholder meeting. So I'll illustrate those changes today, kind of walk you through it. Okay, so starting with first chapter, we go into the introduction. Ken really outlined a lot of this already. Kessler Mountain started as a 387-acre natural area located in southeast Fayetteville, as many of you know, next to the regional park. An important point here is that this trail system is really meant to be kind of an extension or part of the regional park. So during this process, it is important to recognize that fact, that they're not two separate things. It's really kind of the regional park is a segue also into the trail system. So kind of they work together. We go into a little bit on the background, the geology of the mountain, and a little bit of the topography here and the location. Then we get into the history in these next few pages. We talk about kind of the roots with the John and Hannah Reef family who purchased the mountain back in the 1800s, and then on up to some modern development and some of the great things that Frank Sharp has done to help preserve, to get the word out here and preserve this mountain. Here we talk about the existing conditions. So what this is some of the existing plans that were in place before we started this process. There's about 4 or 5 different plans in place. One was the Mount Kessler Reserve document that Frank Sharp put together with Kessler Greenways as an effort to save the mountain and really, get people behind it. The other, which was really a driving force in this process, is the Rapid Terrestrial Ecological Assessment by Theo Witzel, who was commissioned by the Fayetteville Natural Heritage Association to do an ecological study of the mountain, so we could kind of see the sensitive areas and some of the sensitive habitats on the mountain, so that we could stay away from those areas and in some places reroute existing trails to stay out of those areas. Another here is a study that was done by Alan Edmondson on the analysis of old growth forest parcels on Kessler Mountain. And then there's another, and then we also included the regional park plan from 2012. And then some trail use data that Frank and Kessler Greenways collected at the Rock City entrance trailhead over on Frank Sharp's land. So this is some trail use data from 2013 up to 2015 when the trailhead was put in off Judge Cummings Road. This chapter outlines the objectives which were developed in the stakeholder meetings through the consensus building efforts of the facilitator. The objectives of this plan were to assess the sustainability of existing trails and needs for potential reroutes and trail improvements. Also to address the needs and desires of targeted user groups while considering impacts to wildlife and other resources, as well as minimizing the impact of any new trails, improve user safety, reduce user conflict, assess the skill level of existing trails, and propose new trails that create a greater diversity of user ability and skill levels. Also to determine key connections between recreational areas and improve trail system functionality by creating better links to trails. And lastly, create a sustainable multi-use trail system that appeals to the widest variety of users. This is just a brief company introduction, who we are, what we do, and then the scope of work that we were contracted to do through the City of Fayetteville. Chapter 5, we go into the planning process. Yeah, this is kind of describes the process performed to gather input involving some public comment sessions. We had 2 public input sessions, one of which was led by Alta and involved some marking up of some of the maps and getting feedback from the community. And then also there was a second one, and then there was a survey, an online survey that they were able to fill out as well. Along with, of course, the many stakeholder meetings that we had. This lists the stakeholders that were involved that Ken mentioned earlier, and just a summary of those public input sessions. And in the appendix, you can find some feedback from those input sessions. Okay, so Chapter 6, we're kind of getting into the meat and potatoes of the plan. This is the actual trail plan itself that we developed. It really consists of 3 components, which is the existing trail improvements plan, the proposed new trails, and then other trail and recreation opportunities. As previously mentioned, one of the driving force behind this was to create a shared use trail system that really appealed to the widest user groups, diverse user groups, everybody from hikers to bikers to nature enthusiasts, trail runners, and users with special needs. We went through numerous concepts concept development and feedback, and kind of vetted that through the stakeholder meetings and also through public input. It's kind of a brief description here of sustainable trail design guidelines. This is first and foremost in our minds when we're proposing any new trails, and definitely when we're doing the existing trail assessment. I won't go into the details, but these are the guidelines that determines, you know, what it is to have sustainable trail. And this is the map. This is the plan itself, which is also on the board over there. I'll do a brief overview of it, and we'll get into the details in these next few chapters. So everything in red is the existing trail. Everything in orange here, the orange dots, are any substantial reroutes along the trail that are proposed. In some cases, if the city were not able to acquire or gain access to private parcels, these would be Plan Bs. And then the dotted trail, the pink trail, the blue trail, and the green trail are all new proposed trails. So starting with the existing trails, as part of our contract, we were to go to do a full assessment of the existing trail system and identify any issues such as drainage problems, you know, poorly aligned areas, you know, places where the trails have widened. We all know it's gotten a lot of use since it's open to the public. So there are a lot of places where we've seen really heavy impacts, and so our job is to go through and GPS those places and identify, you know, what the problem is and recommend a solution. So here we have the plan. This is the plan, the existing trail improvements plan. And as you can see, there's you know, a dot and an indicator for each problem area with a condition and a prescription for each of those areas. And we go on to elaborate on different prescription treatments, such as rock armoring of drainages, realigning turns, and that sort of thing. And the next few pages are those different conditions and prescriptions with estimated cost. Then we get into the reroutes that we have proposed. There's really three primary areas, starting with the spellbound reroute. That is here in the bottom, in the southwest corner. This is a kind of a Plan B option if the city was not able to acquire or gain access to this 40-acre parcel, I think it is. So that's the orange dots that you see here that would put the trail back on, back within the park, and then the trails on the private land would be closed. The other reroute is around the Shale Barren, which was identified by Theo Wissel in his report as a sensitive area. So we have recommended rerouting new trail around that and closing and restoring the old trails back to nature. And the final few reroutes here are on Crazy Mary Trail. One is at the top of Crazy Mary Trail, where it drops in really steeply off of kind of a bluff line area. So rerouting that segment of trail in order to make it to meet sustainable guidelines, and also at the bottom. And we should also note a change that are in all the maps that are not in the previous version of this plan, which is right here at the bottom of Crazy Mary. This is a change request that came out of last stakeholder meeting, which was to create an intersection further down at the overlook at the bottom of Crazy Mary on this East Bluff Trail, which this will help kind of so there'll be 2 trails here, and this will help dissipate traffic. It'll allow hikers to take a more direct route along the bluff line, and then it'll allow, other users to be able to use this alternate line down with this reroute. Then we kind of described trail closures and also private trail, some of the trails that are on private land, and then the former road beds, like the Trent Trail, for example, which goes up the spine of the mountain. This starts down here by the water towers and heads up along the ridge line there. And we recommended that trail be opened back up to establish more of a 5-foot wide bed so that it could be used for emergency access and also improve the drainage. And it's a great way to the top of the mountain quickly, so it's, more alluring for hikers specifically who may not want to take the Serpentine Trail or Crazy Mary, which is a much longer route to the top. Okay, Chapter 8 is the proposed new trails. This chapter outlines the proposed trail system for an additional 6.6 miles of soft surface trail. There are really 3 total trails that are soft surface, which is the beginner loop, the lower bluff trails, the east bluff trail, and then we also included, though it wasn't really in our contract, but the active transportation trail and regional park trail loop. So the beginner loop is close to what will be the main trailhead at the base of the mountain. It really kind of skirts the landfill area and splits the 2 areas of the landfill, provides a nice 1.5 mile loop. This would be, real beginner level, probably 5 foot wide, really smooth surface trail. Then we get into the lower bluffline trails, which are all the trails in blue. These trails emanate from the main parking and also make the critical connection up to the top of the mountain. And it skirts the base of the bluff line here on the east side. And then lastly, the East Bluff Trail, which is approximately 1.7 miles. And this trail skirts the top of the bluff line. It's also important to note that we've made some connections here on the blue trail that connect quickly to the tops to some really nice overlooks that overlook the regional park and the landfill area. So those are some more direct routes and provide some short loop options for hikers and bikers alike. Then we have the paved active transportation trail, regional park. This really just outlines the connection from the regional park to the north, over to the far north end of the property by the Rock City entrance. And then also a trail going around the regional park. We've outlined 5 different trailheads that would be your main access to the park. The first one is really more of a temporary trailhead because this is the parking lot that's being built right now as part of the regional park. The main trailhead that would be at the base of the landfill, it may not happen for a while. So the important thing is to be able to have a trailhead that's close to the system as possible. So in the interim, the plan is to use the ball field's parking lot and provide a trail connection to it. Then we also have the one on the Judge Cummings Road, which is in the area where the trailhead is currently parking. There's also a potential secondary parking that we identified off Kessler Mountain Road, and then a ADA senior citizens trailhead up by the water towers. In Chapter 9, we just cover additional trail opportunities. This is just kind of high-level conceptual ideas of what else could be possible out there. The landfill we saw provided a really cool opportunity for a bike park. So we integrated an idea there to do kind of a purpose-built bike skills park in that area. Another idea was an interpretive nature hiking trail, ADA accessible trail that could be a crust stone. This could take place somewhere at the base, maybe around the regional park. And lastly, potentially a purpose-built downhill mountain bike trail. Chapter 10 covers signage and risk management. This is pretty crucial because signage is needed probably, first and foremost out there, considering that the signage exists now, I think is okay, but there's a lot of, there's some new trails being developed and there's a lot of trail cutting going on, so there needs to be some trail etiquette signage placed, as well as just good wayfinding signage. So we've included okay, so here's the signage and risk management plan. What you see in yellow outlines an emergency access route. So if the Trent Trail were to be reestablished and opened back up to more of a 4 or 5 foot wide trail bed where you could get a mule or off-road emergency vehicle up there, that would act as your main kind of corridor through the trail system for emergency access and for maintenance as well. And then, of course, all the concrete paths would also double as emergency access. In addition, we have outlined where all kiosks would go, as well as trail markers for the entire system, and difficulty level on the signs as well, which is really important. This is the Northwest Arkansas Soft Surface Signage Plan. So this is the plan that Alto developed with our assistance, that's kind of being established as the standard throughout Northwest Arkansas. Here's some risk management guidelines, and just information on trail difficulty and signage, and also emergency access plan and maintenance and inspection. And the last chapter is the phasing plan and budget. We have recommended for the phase 1 for the initial efforts that first and foremost the private property issue needs to be solved, and those landowners need to be approached to hopefully retain the existing trails would be the hope, either through an easement or a purchase of some sort. Secondly is to implement the existing trail improvements plan to try to get the trail up to par, and ready for the impacts that it's currently receiving. And then the signage as well, putting a full signage system in, along with difficulty levels, and other, risk management and trail etiquette signage. And also the connector trail that would go from, which I've actually outlined here. There would need to be a connector trail, which would be a piece of the blue trail that would come from the baseball parking area and make its way up to the top, because there's currently no access to the top once the regional park goes in. And also in that first phase, a final design of any new trails, any of the new proposed trails that the city plans to implement. And then further phases down the road, we would start to implement the newer trails, the beginner loop, the lower bluff trails, and eventually the East Bluff Trail. And the overall budget for the entire project, including a few trailheads and a few parking lots, is $888,000. This is a high-level budget based on, competitive professional trail building rates. And the appendix, we included the Kessler active transportation connections. So this just shows the Razorback Greenway with, some of the connections to Kessler. And also all the information from the public input session. So the comment sheet summary. And the public input survey that was online. And lastly, the species of conservation concern. This is a new map that we've integrated that shows a lot of the species that Theo had outlined in his report and where they are in relation to the existing trails and the new trails that have been put in the plan. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Woody. I know you worked very hard, and I think you've done a thorough job putting the plan together. Lots of long stakeholder meetings, staff as well, Ken and Allison and everybody else in the Parks Department. It's been kind of I don't know when we started this. I've forgotten. Yeah, it's been a while. Well, the formal process. Okay, staff, do you have any more comments at this time? Yeah. Any comments from the board? Okay, if not, any of you that would like to speak, there's not so many here. I think we need to form a line. I think we can come up one at a time and make it work in that way. Dwayne, yeah, I know who you are, but for everybody else's benefit, would you please just state your name and address and also use the mic, please?
Okay, my name is Dwayne, D-U-A-N-E, Wolchen, W-O-L-T-J-E-N, 821 Appleberry Drive, Fayetteville. And I want to talk about some of the changes that have been made in the map just recently. And one of them, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is hard to address everybody. Sir?
I can zoom into the area you're talking.
Oh, okay. Well, what I'm going to do, so the board can see where I'm pointing, is this new line that goes around here. Actually, only this part of it is new today. And it is designed to bypass these meanders that are favored by the bicycles for our direct trail, which is favored by hikers and pedestrians, other pedestrians. The only thing I see that I would like to see further considered is that a connection should be established right here so that a person using Crazy Mary can easily switch over to this non-meandering route to get back to the water tanks. That's 25 feet of trail, maybe 50 at the most, right in that area. And I think that this was a very forward change that was severely needed. So I'm very thankful to see it. When I was arguing for this, I have to tell you, I was arguing for the people who do not have a voice. That is the hiker, the pedestrian user. We aren't organized. We don't have money. But we have a strong interest in these trails. And I did not realize that was going to be a need when this process of stakeholder meetings started out. So I was representing, at the beginning, a piece of property over here, a big piece of property that is owned. Would you back out and show that to the rest of the folks here? Yeah, this thing doesn't point on that screen, but it's to the property boundary and Kessler Mountain Road. The property is to the south and all across there. It's called Pear Tree Farm, and it is a property that is owned by Ozark Regional Land Trust. And future projections are that it might be a great idea to consider extending trail from Kessler Mountain to Stevenson Mountain to Miller Mountain. And being on the board of directors of Ozark Regional Land Trust, I wanted to see what was going to happen on Kessler. And so I made my presence at the stakeholders meeting. Thanks, Tommy. And it was touch and go. I'm about to tell you, it was touch and go because I wasn't seeing things I liked. But things have improved. And I will probably make a report to the board of Ozark Regional Land Trust that in the future, an entity like, I don't know what, a trail system or some kind like MAP is really great at trail systems, that under certain conditions they ought to allow that to happen. So this is important to the land trust, but more, it's important to the citizens of Fayetteville right now, today. So I appreciate the forbearance that it took for me to argue with you all so long, so hard, and fortunately so reasonably successfully. Thank you. Now, I think there are some people here who want to make some comments, and I think they're appropriate, and I would like for you to listen to them most. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne, and thank you for your time commitments as well to the stakeholders group.
Hi, my name is Roy Penny. I live in Butterfield Village, and I've only lived there for a week or two, so I might have forgotten the address. I think it's 1854 Elkhorn Circle, okay? I certainly, like a lot of other people, especially those in the Ozark Society, appreciate the trails that we have in Fayetteville. We have a lot of beautiful trails. We hike the one around Lake Fayetteville about every 2 weeks. We've hiked Mount Kessler a couple of times, not nearly as much. And like Dwayne, my primary concern is to make sure that we satisfy as much as possible and make life as easy as possible for everybody, especially the hikers, the bikers. We know that bikes are here forever. We have to tolerate bikes on hikers' trails, and they have to tolerate us. So we just try to make the best of it. I have a couple of questions first, and you may not be able to answer them exactly, but if you give some sort of an estimate, that might help a bit. Of all the trails that you've planned on Kessler Mountain, how many are dedicated to hiking? Thank you. Approximately, what percentage?
You know, the trail system as a whole is a multi-use system, so there is no hiking-specific trail and there is no biking-specific trail. It's a shared use.
So they're all shared?
They're all shared use.
Okay. I can tell you something that hasn't worked out very well, in my opinion, and hopefully it doesn't happen in Kessler the way it has in Lake Fayetteville Park. On the east side and the north side, we used to have beautiful hiking trails there. Now a lot of those hiking trails have been trashed, and we're forced to use the bike trails. That's not necessary at all, because if you just take a look, you can have two separate trails very easily. In fact, there is one trail that is separate. That's one of the most beautiful in the park. The trail that's along the old Butterfield Road, that is separate than the bike trail. Beautiful trail. Bikers don't use it because they like the Serpentine Trail, which is a ways off. But there are other parts where actually 2 or 3 years ago there were trails under the pine trees that we could hike. We shared them at that time with the bikers, but the bikers tend to tear up the trails. Now what's happened is those trails have been made serpentine trails all of the trails that we used to hike have now been trashed. There's signs that indicate there's a $500 fine for hiking them. You can't hike them anyway because they have trash on them. I would ask this commission to take that into consideration for these new trails, and if at all possible, consider the minor amount of work that would need to be done to establish around Lake Fayetteville both biking trails and hiking trails. Okay? Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Penny.
Just so you'll know, when those trails were originally built around the lake, our intent, because I helped build them with our scout troop, was keep them in the pine needles. The idea initially being a softer surface to run on, being a little more cushioned, but that, and also for the erosion control. And so,
Those have been eliminated.
yeah, I know, and I understand what you're talking about. Also, the idea was to keep them in the shade, and that was the intent of that too. So, thank you for your comments.
No, I just wrote a note to Connie. You don't mind, you all have to pay.
Here you go.
No, I don't think that. Any of you would like to add that? Sort of summarizes what I just said.
Would you please state your name and your address, sir?
Steve Schneider. I live in Springdale. I'm here as a representative of the International Mountain Bike Association. So, I'd like to tell a little story, just take a minute or so, which is a really cool story. Frank Sharp, we love you, Frank, started the Mount Kessler Greenway. As the country grows, save a little country, as Frank said, which was an awesome statement. And then he created the Mount Kessler Advisory Board, which I was very thankful to be part of. It was an awesome experience. It made me a better person. It made me a better conservationist. It made me a better environmentalist, and the list goes on and on. And throughout the process of this master plan, which Woody, you did an incredible job, by the way. Thank you. Literally, this is an incredible master plan. For those of you who don't know about master planning, this is awesome. So thank you for doing that. It was a really cool experience. We sliced and diced and chopped, and everyone who was represented, the schools, the university, the walkers, the hikers, the bikers, the city, everybody was represented. So the voice was heard. The voice was heard. So through that process the last couple of years, I guess it's been about a year, I don't know. When was the purchase of the land? Was it a year and a half ago? Okay, yeah. So it's been maybe a year and a half. But that said, we're at this point. We're done. I think the only thing that I would recommend in your advice to the City Council is Chapter 9 is critical, because whether we like it or not, and we, the people of Northwest Arkansas, cycling's here, trails are here. We're building 60 miles of new trail in Benton County. So the tourism part comes into play. Fayetteville needs these trails for tourism to bring revenue dollars into the city. So I think Chapter 9 is critical for Woody. I think when this master plan is approved, which I believe is going to be approved unanimously through you guys and then to the City Council unanimously, I would be shell-shocked if it wasn't, that we need to consider tourism and tourist dollars coming into this, to Washington County and Fayetteville in particular. So that's the only concern I have. But the rest of the master plan is awesome. So I would hope today that you guys would actually 100% unanimously vote in favor of it and pass it on to the City Council. Let's get it done. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Steve.
My name is Frank Sharp. Steve's a hard act to follow. Dwayne, here's your pen. When we started this, we talked about preservation of natural resources. So now we have 400 acres that will be covered with a conservation easement. We talked about watershed protection, which protects watersheds on both Illinois and the White Rivers. We talked about education, and we'll have probably 200 fifth graders come out this month for field trips out and tour Kessler and get a chance to be out in the woods. And we talked about recreation, which you all are involved in. But we've got to pay back that $800,000, so there's economics involved. And I'm going to tell you about last Saturday. We had a group of 29 hikers from Fort Smith called the Trailblazers. And they spent the morning on the mountain. They came down. I fixed pizza for them. They made a very nice contribution to Fayetteville Natural Heritage. Bob, I've got it in an envelope. I'll give you the day after tomorrow. And that's their third trip to the mountain. And then 5 guys drove up with license plates. I went over. They're from Minneapolis. And I said, how'd you hear about this? They said, well, they heard about all the trails, and they went up on the trails and came back down a little bloody. They said, you know, we have flat trails in Minnesota. And they were really sort of shocked with the trails. Then they were going to Bentonville slaughter pen. And Steve can tell you how many dollars, you know, bikers and visitors spend when they come to this area, because we're creating a destination here. And I think it was our infamous Governor Faubus that said there's more money in tourists than there is in cotton, and they're a lot easier to pick.
Thank you, Frank. Come on up.
I don't know much about mics, but hello. Oh, okay. I'm Barb McClellan at 2615 North Stagecoach Drive in Fayetteville. And, I mean, this looks awesome and everything, and it looks like you're doing lots of trails. Okay, I regularly walk Walker, Walker Park Trail, the Mud Creek Trail, and Gully Park, because I live fairly near Gully Park. I really would like to see some, you know, just hiking, walking trail only, not all shared, you know, multi-use, because it's, you know, I'll be walking along and some of those bicycles come really fast, and not everybody says on your left, you know, and a lot of times, and they'll just zoom right, and I'll go, oh, my goodness, or they'll get right up on me and go, on your left, and I'll go, you know, and I don't hear them coming. And Gully Park, it's not a very wide trail for you know, the Walker's pretty wide, and so is Mud Creek. But I still think it's a problem, and I don't see why, with all of those possible trails and such a huge tract of land, you can't just have a hiking, walking only trail, at least 1 or 2, you know, and not have the bikes, because, you know, I just think it's a problem for maybe some of us old folks that, you know, want to just take a nice walk, you know, and we don't have to want to worry about a bicycle coming up on us, you know. So anyway, that's my input on that. So.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, I'm the other half of the Woolton gang, Judy Woolton, 821 North Appleberry Drive. And I'm a member of the Ozark Highland Trail Association, the Ozark Society Highlands chapter. And last fall I decided that I really wanted to emphasize that we will now be entering the park from the east side and not from Farmington side on private property. And in order to do that, I've been having hikes, 1 in December, 2 in February, a couple smaller ones in March, and another one in April. And we have been able to, with 2 clubs, 2 times with the Ozark Society and twice with the Ozark Highland Trail Association, about 40 people that are members of those organizations have gone in from the east side. And I'd just like to give you a little bit of the perspective of a hiker. And we were meeting at 8:45. We hike from 9 to noon approximately. We do 5.5 to 6 miles. I rated it moderate for 2 reasons. There was 450 altitude change up and down, and it was pretty long. It certainly was not an easy hike from that standpoint. And they all did very well, but we had to carry our own water and our own snacks. and we had no incidences of problems at all. Now, the hiker, we were seeing very nice people out there on the trail that we saw, but we saw very few people. Mostly the early morning people were already gone with their runs and out of there, if that's what they were doing. And the other people were coming in about 11 or 11:30, and I know that the user time is much heavier for everything in the afternoons, particularly at this time of the year when there's good views and it's clear and it's cool. Now, when you get into the summertime, you're still going to have people mostly using the trail from, I would say, from 12 to 5. I think in studies you'll see about trails that's when the heavier time is. And more likely to have conflicts between the hikers and the bikers. And what I think we could do to make this experience a lot nicer for the hikers is that they know a route of how many miles it's going to be, what that trail is, a little flyer that just says you can make a loop here. You can go up from the base of the hill, go up so many feet approximately, and you will turn on this trail with a name, and when you get to this intersection, you come back on the Trent Trail and you come around. We rescued several people that had no way at all how to get back to Sharps Ridge. They're saying, well, we came in from Sharps, and I said, well, you don't want to go down here. You're going to be you're going to be the wrong side of the hill from that. And they said, well, can we follow you to find out where we turned back and where we should? We thought we were going to get someplace. So if this was happening with very light impact in the area, and it wasn't so that the trails weren't marked, or necessarily, there was a name up there, but they were just out having fun. They were college girls or whatever. And then we had another woman who was going to lead a hike for Hill and Dale, wasn't it, hikers? And she tagged along so she could learn something about what to do for the hike, and she's now a member of one of our organizations. Okay, so a flyer that says this is a loop, and you're going to have less rescues required, as a matter of fact, if you give them an idea of how many altitude change they're going to have, how long it's going to take them, what the distance is, and that there's no supplies up there. I'm not recommending supplies. I'm just recommending specific information for your hikers. You can even suggest better days of the week and better times. That's going to be more enjoyable for everybody, I think. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
That was pretty thorough.
My name is Jonathan Sebring, 1017 South Emily. I like Chapter 9, the possibility for future provisions. I think it'll help eliminate a lot of the issues. If we can do both the hiking-specific, more scenic trail, it'll take some of the hiking strain off of the multi-use dirt surface trails that we have now. In the same vein, I think to eliminate a lot of the user conflict, a biking-specific, rather it be bike park, directional mountain biking trail would also be a great asset to mitigating user conflict, but also to create something that at this point doesn't exist in the area. As Steve said, there's so much money being put into tourism for mountain biking. We're never going to match up to Bentonville as far as gross trail mileage, but Kessler is such a unique spot that we can create something that is so far beyond the quality that exists up there now that will capitalize on people that are already there, already know about Bentonville, Benton County riding, and are there to do that, but hear about Kessler, hear about something that's going to be different, and will bring their tourism dollars here. Other than that, love the master plan.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. Anybody else have any comments they'd like to make?
I'm Tom Perry, 1300 East Sunny Hill Drive, Fayetteville. Really just want to kind of amplify what's been said. It seems to me like what makes the most sense for the park is to have separate hiking trails and separate biking trails. That way, both can be expanded and utilized the best. If you have a multi-use trail, it's kind of hard to make things specific for the bikers or the hikers.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Do any of the board members have questions for any of the staff, the consultant? No questions?
Does anybody here know that if they're, I know it's suggested when you're biking, you're coming up on a walker to give notice that you're approaching them. Does anybody know if there's actually an ordinance anywhere that says that you're required to give a ding, with a bike, say 30 feet out? I'm wondering if that would help. Something that, not that I want another rule, another ordinance, but that would at least be required that the bikers notify the walkers that they're coming up on. And I know a problem with that too is many times in dense foliage, you're on the people before you know it around a curve, and I recognize that too. But does anybody know if that's ever been more enforced or something that might help with this situation?
No, but I think more education that we can do out there, and it's just good etiquette, trail etiquette that we try to stress out there. To create an ordinance, I don't know what the penalty would be. It would be really hard to catch someone, so I don't think, that would probably be something. But we do want to increase our education for trail etiquette out there so that we can keep them safe.
And
A lot of
you
people
hearing
out there.
dings all the time as you go through the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have signs like that.
I mean, I think you can say the same thing for hikers as well. There's plenty of hikers that are out there that have dogs on long lead lines. It's respect all around for all aspects, and I think as we continue down this road, the education is going to improve along with the signage on the trail system. So I think all of that will help along the way. To address some of these things. The stakeholder group worked really hard for the trail systems that we do have. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with the beginner and intermediate levels that it's going to be much wider, much more friendly for hikers and bikers to interact. And that the intentions were not to build excessive amount of trail, but the right amount of trail that gave access to all the citizens in the community and any tourists that were coming here as well. In talking to taking some people out there who are up in Bentonville building trail, they were absolutely blown away by the trails that we have here, of the quality, the difference of the land structure. And Jonathan's very accurate in saying that this is going to be a destination for not only bikers but hikers and people who really enjoy the outdoors. And I don't think we want to negate that for anybody to the access of the trails on any of that aspect, both hiking and biking. At least at this point, I think we should look to the future and what that can bring, the educational aspect that we didn't even talk about tonight for the kids. That's one aspect that is important for our community, to get our kids out and educate them about the environment that we have and about the trail system, about everything else that's going on. Roy, I would highly encourage you to look at some of the opportunities as far as the trail building experience and learning and educating about the trails that are out there and why the trails get built. Ozark Off-Road Cyclists, the Ozark Highland Trails, they do a lot of it. There's reasons why those pine sections went away and why the city, said absolutely we need somebody to take on these trails and create a more sustainable environment for them. So I think the process and I think the plan we have is really exceptional. I look forward to putting this on the ground. I don't know how much we can get on the ground initially, but I would say to put this plan forward is really good with the hopes that future access and trails and expansion is not negated just because we have this master trail plan. I don't think that we can look to this as a sole entity for the entire future of the trail system. I think that it's going to have to be readdressed and looked at consistently to make sure that we're providing a quality trail and that it provides what we need to for the citizens and the community, that stays the ecology and the environment that is there is respected as well. Certainly.
A question I thought was asked was something about the profile of...
Dwayne, would you please come back up to if you're going to speak again.
Dwayne Wolchin, 821 Appleberry Drive, Fayetteville. I thought somebody asked a question about the profile of the current users out there on Kessler Mountain Trails. And I didn't hear the number 80% are pedestrians, but I believe I'm approximately correct in stating that. And I think that's a very important consideration also. We've tried to take account of it, and to a certain extent we have. But if we don't have a balance in our trail design, you will see a predominance of one user and a reduction of the other user. Trail objective number 6 was to build a trail that is attractive, I think is the word, to the range of users who are going to use it. If you have succeeded, you will see a good mix of both kinds of users. If you are not successful, you will see a predominance of one user develop over another, a big predominance. So as you review this in the future, that's one of your landmarks to look at. Thank you.
I agree with the data that was collected. I think there's some of the data you really have to take a strong look at. Somebody that's hiking half a mile in and hiking a half a mile back out is not the same user as somebody that's taken off on an 8-mile run on the trail system. That's a very different user group, and that wasn't looked at. That's not something that is addressed within. So, I mean, yeah, we can say, oh yeah, this data said 80% of the trail users, but that 80% may have only hiked a half a mile in and a half a mile back out. So, and that's not the same as somebody that touches all 8 miles of the trail.
I've got a question for the consultant. Do you have examples in other areas of the country that you were able to implement the etiquette and educating the citizens in the etiquette of good trail riding and hiking? Because it seems like the majority of our comments not in the public opinion have obviously been the aspect of hiking, biking, and how that works together. But I think we could, in lieu of just creating separate trails altogether, if we could educate our citizens, number one, better, and trail users. So do you have examples of that you've done in other areas?
Sure. At the end of the day, you know, it's really up to the city to implement a system, basically a signage and risk management system that's going to address that. There are plenty of examples across the country of multi-use systems that have been, you know, really successful in achieving this. One, for example, is at Oak Mountain State Park in Alabama, which is I think a 25-mile trail system that really started as hiking only pretty much, and then mountain bikers gained access to it and really ultimately became the stewards of the park and built a bunch of new trails and maintained the existing trails along with the hikers. Been a great success story. So, you know, and the big thing really is, like, it goes back to education and having that at the kiosk, you know, that people can see, you know, what the trail etiquette is, and then also providing different, as I think Judy had mentioned, different loop configurations and options for hikers so they can see kind of what are some optimal routes for them, and then the same thing for mountain bikers. And then also and the trail design itself, how the trail is designed. With this existing trail improvements plan, you know, we've identified different areas where there are really bad sight lines, where you could potentially have user conflict. Intersections, for example, that's another, you know, place where you would have user conflict. So, you know, at the end of the day, it's a you know, a mix of things, a special formula to come up with, but it can work and has worked in many places.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, you come on up.
I'm not against bikers by any means, but I just want to be able to enjoy my walk. But I think sometimes it's even dangerous the way these bikers go so fast and everything. And I don't think it's a matter of just etiquette. You know, I think, and I don't. It seems like there's a mindset. I don't. Are you a panel or board or whatever? It seems like you have a mindset, and you even said, well, you know, why couldn't we just do the etiquette in lieu of having separate, you know, biking and hiking trails? And it seems like you've almost made up your mind that you're going to just have multi-purpose and you're not even going to consider having separate. And I don't understand that, because all the parks in Fayetteville, and Fayetteville has a wonderful park system. As far as I know, just about all of them are multi-use. Why can't we have some separate? Except the only maybe Lake Fayetteville going through the woods isn't multi-use. Maybe that's the only one I can think of. Yeah, so why can't you, you know, be a little bit more flexible and listen to what people are saying? I mean, you've had like 4 different people say, can't we have some separate trails? And you're going, well, we don't really want to do that. I mean, that's what I'm hearing from you anyway. So.
Well, before anybody else speaks on that same, you know, I don't want to just keep, we're not going to sit here all night and hear the same general comments from different folks. Well, I may get some folks that haven't had a chance to speak yet. I'd rather spend our time doing that, I think. But I just want to tell everybody that, you know, our role on the Parks Board, all of us are hikers, cyclists, trail runners, boaters. You know, you have a wide variety of folks up here, and we're all citizens of Fayetteville. And I can just tell you my personal perspective going through the stakeholders process and seeing the input, getting the reports from the public comment sessions. None of that led me to want to segregate everybody. I think that there's always going to be some opportunities that, you know, there might be an opportunity for a mountain bike specific trail or a hiking specific trail, but I don't want to see Mount Kessler just covered in miles and miles and miles of trails. It needs to be preserved as a natural area. I don't think it's right for us to say we prefer cycling over hiking, and we're going to start taking away miles of trails from specific user groups. I personally would like to see us try to work together and all get along on the trail. If it doesn't work out, I'm sure staff is going to be right back here in front of this board recommending some changes. You know, like some of the comments have been said, this is a plan. It's, you know, plans change from time to time. The needs of the citizens are going to change. I'm certain that things are going to get added and taken away from Kessler Mountain, you know, periodically. So I guess I'm saying all that just to let some of you know we have heard you, and this is not the first time. There are people out there that want segregated trails, and we do understand that. So, sir, would you like to come up?
Bill Durham. I live in Farmington, just below Spellbound. That tells you where it is. I've been riding Mount Kessler. I'm a member of Ozark Off-Road Cyclists for over 5 years, 6 years, something like that. And that trail has changed so much since it's gotten all this publicity. The area from the smokehouse down up to the fire ring is almost unrecognizable as what it was 5 years ago. It's the hikers, and then again, I'm not against hikers being there. I'm all for both parties. I don't have a problem with hikers at all, but because there are so many hikers now in there, the trail no longer is 16, 18 inches wide. It is huge. There's shortcuts everywhere. There's erosion from people taking shortcuts, and it's not bikers doing it. It's uninformed hikers. I'm not saying it's anybody in this room. It's just unfortunate when you get a lot of people out there, that's what happens. So the bikers built this trail. Ozark Off-Road Cyclists years ago built most of this trail, and I'm okay with sharing it with hikers. I'm not asking not to. But I do agree, obviously it'd be great if we had a separate hiking trail. I wish them the best. Maybe they should get together and go build one, because I know it's very expensive for the city to just decide, hey, we're going to go build a hiking trail. Fortunately for all of us, Ozark Off-Road Cyclists has built this trail for all of us to use, and we want to share it as best we can. And it is a real deal about bikers coming up on hikers. That is a safety issue. I try to whistle when I get anywhere close, because it's amazing. People just can't hear you coming up on a bike, and I've scared people not wanting to. So now I'll start whistling way in advance. I rode Kessler just last Sunday, had people thanking me, for whistling, and I always thank them for if they move out of my way or if I stop for them. I'll do whatever is right depending on the situation. And I try to be nice and courteous to them. I've never had an upset hiker with me as far as I know. But anyway, I just want you to know I'm more than willing to share the trail with them, and I just want it to be known who built this trail, and we're glad to have them.
Thank you. Okay. Any other board members have any comments?
I'd like to make a motion that the Kessler Mountain Trails Master Plan, Final Plan 2016, be accepted.
I'd like to add to that it's assessed, and that trail plan, this is not locking this property into this design for imminent future. I'd also like to ask that the contract that's created further within Arkansas Land Trust be also brought before the stakeholder group and brought back before it is signed by the city as well. I think it's important that as this property gets put into management, that the public be aware of the contract that's going forward.
Okay, well, we've got a motion on the floor. I'd like to second that.
Chairman?
Yes.
I might make a recommendation. Tonight, we are looking only at the master plan, and I think for us to bring the conservation into it would be possibly at another meeting, or at least as a separate motion, so they're not in conflict. Because
Right.
that wasn't on our original agenda.
Right. Yeah, so your motion didn't include anything about the conservation either.
No, it's strictly this plan.
Okay. So again, I'll second that motion to accept the plan as presented. With no other comments, would somebody on staff please take roll? Yes.
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 Okay. Well, I'd like to thank the staff for all your preparation for this meeting. Woody, thank you again for doing all of your work. Thank you to everybody that showed up and gave us your input. The master plan will be recommended to City Council, and I believe it will be considered by them on May 3rd. Is that correct? Okay. And that meeting will be held here as well. All right, we'll be adjourned. Thank you.